Thanks for joining. I'm Joshua Law with Mission in Motion, and today I'm going to talk to you about migrating from EDA to Agentforce Education and some of the things to look out for as you're doing that. We are going to be discussing term versus the academic year. We're going to be looking at program plans and their learning programs, the learning plans. And then we're going to kind of give you a really quick overview and look at some of the Omni Studio Flex cards that come native with Education Cloud to kind of give you that holistic, data-rich UI 360 view of a learner. So let's get into it. So the EDA term has a lookup to the account. So, everything has to be defined by an account. So this would be like maybe your school account, right? And then we have our standard start date, end date for the term. And then over here, you can kind of define that term even further. So we have the types of, quarter, semester, school year, the grading period sequence. So that's like if it's the first quarter, second quarter, first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, whatever. And then you can put in how many days that section of the term is for. So this would mean you would need a term object for each individual grading period sequence. So if you break it down into first semester, second semester, you would have each of those would have a term record, and you could put how many instructional days are in that term. But what I really want to point out is this parent term and the parent hierarchy. To define your calendar year, you may want to create a parent term that's the 2024-2025 school year. And then each of the terms, so maybe you have a fall 2024 and a spring 2025, each of those would then include that 2024-2025 term here as a parent term. And then if you even break it down even farther into first and second semester inside of spring 2025, that's another, 2 more term records. So everything is a term record, and we use this parent hierarchy to really kind of define and outline our school calendar. Now let's take a look at how that looks like, what that looks like in Education Cloud. First of all, we have an academic year record. That simply just defines the academic year. Not a lot of details in here, but just says, hey, this is the academic year 2025-2026. So we have a dedicated record for that. Then next comes our term record. And the term record is really kind of focused around registration and enrollment. So we have a start and an end date of the term. We have when registration opens, when registration closes, and then what is the late registration date. Then further, we create another term record called the academic session. Academic session defines more of like the course details inside of that term. So the academic session looks up to the academic term. So we're saying in the spring 2026, classes are going to start and end at these times. Here's our exam schedule. We have the add drop deadline, the course withdrawal deadline, when grades are due, and then when are grades available to the students, and then when are we going to audit this term. So you get a lot more information across these 3 objects. So the thing to keep in mind here when you're migrating from EDA to Education Cloud is that you're going from one singular term object to 3 different objects inside of Education Cloud. So you have to really look at your data and say, okay, here are where I defined the years. So those need to come over as academic years. Here's where I defined, general terms. So I'm going to bring those over. And here's where I kind of these are the term records where I defined sessions or more data about that term, and these need to come over as sessions. So it's not just a simple all of the terms come over as all of another object in Education Cloud. There's really an expansion here. We're going to take a look at the program plan in EDA versus the learning program in Education Cloud. So here's the program plan in EDA. We have the program is the computer science, BS of computer science. You can declare an account. So this would, again, you would create a department for each of your, you would create an account for each of the departments in your university or school. Then you would add a start and end date, total required credits, so how many credits you need to get the BS, and then the status of that. If we look at the related tab, we can see what the requirements are for this. So this is nested under plan requirements. So the program plan has plan requirements. So one requirement is to take the Intro to Programming course. So now we're looking at it more of a course level. So typically each plan requirement inside of the program plan would be for a singular course, somewhat. You can get very detailed with this in using parent plan requirement. Again, we're utilizing that parent hierarchy. So you could create a parent requirement that's undergrad requirements or lower level freshman year requirements, 101 requirements, or 100 level requirements, right? And then you can create more plan requirements that just look up to that plan requirement. So you could have a program plan requirement that is, freshman level courses. And then you would have 3 program plans or plan requirements underneath that. That is, you know, Intro to Computer Science 1, whatever your university has. And then if you click into the course, it kind of describes the course a little bit, tells you a little bit of the credit hours, which department, and then that course then is broken down into course offerings, and these are the individual times that that class is offered. So that is kind of the big idea here with program plans. Now, if we go over to Education Cloud, this gets expanded quite a bit. We start off with a learning program. Okay? And the learning program is broken down into what are called learning outcomes. So the outcome for your learning program is to get the BS of Computer Science. Okay? We could have multiple different learning plans underneath that learning program in order to accomplish that. Here we could have a computer science, or it could be, mathematics degree or something like that. In order to fulfill this requirement, you can have different tracks and different plans in order to do that. So let's just click on the computer science plan here. Okay, so here is our learning program plan. We can go into the related tab and we'll see that this learning program plan has many different learning program plan requirements. And so now we've kind of broken this down into individual sections. So for example, there is like written communication, physical sciences, critical thinking. There's all these other different types of requirements underneath this learning program plan. And each of these requirements give you what's called a learning achievement. So taking a certain class gives you an achievement that says, hey, you've satisfied that requirement. And these achievements are connected to a learning program requirement, which is connected to a learning program plan, which is connected to a learning program. So a lot of detail here, a lot of depth inside of these, and it can get kind of lost in all of this. But here's the beautiful thing about Education Cloud is it comes equipped with some of these Omni Studio Flex cards. So for example, I come back out here to Learning Program, I can see just at the top level information about the learning program. Here's where it gets really neat, is this program plan summary. Okay, give it a minute to load. Here is where it kind of shows you where everything is broken down. So we have these classes meet this oral communication requirement. These classes meet the critical thinking requirement. These classes meet the written communication, and on and on. And we can go through and we can very easily see how this learning program plan is structured and what requirements are needed, what the student needs to do in order to meet these requirements. So again, when we're thinking about migrating, it's really not a migration of program plans to a learning program and then program requirements into a learning program plan requirement. We really have to think about the structure of those learning plans. Where are your parent hierarchies and where does that fit into the structure of Education Cloud? It's not as easy, again, as a one-to-one. But again, Education Cloud gives you a lot of cool stuff here in which you can very easily see a lot of the stuff, all of the interconnectedness of Education Cloud and the requirements in order to meet certain criteria. So here we're now into the learning course of Computer Science 1, and the learning course here is related to its outcomes, so that default achievement, and you have course offerings inside of this learning course. And if we were to click inside these course offerings, we could see the course offering participants, which is people that are actually enrolled in the course. And we'll look at course offering participants in just a minute. So this gives you a lot of granular detail and a lot of flexibility to really design this the way that fits your educational institution's needs. Additionally, Education Cloud, if we go back, and I'm gonna dig into the participants here. Education Cloud isn't just the academic records. You can see here where we have some Omni Studio Flex cards here that is looking up through like the Student Success Program, right? So if we come in here, we can look at academic records. We can look at activity and engagement. So here are some of the academic advisee cases. So we're getting into the kind of the student success side of Education Cloud, and we can view all of the cases from that student. We can look at their academic enrollment. So up here is kind of a brief recap of the student's whole outlook, and then we can drill down into each term and very easily see their letter grades and their enrollments and how they've done over, quickly right here without having to dig down into each of those individual records. Here's the learner progress. We'll give it just a minute. So we saw the learning program plan, and now we kind of get that same layout here within the contact to see exactly which bits and pieces and parts they have passed. And so we can come down through here and you can see, oral interpersonal communication passed with a B+. So we can go into interpersonal, we can go into the here, I believe it's the course offering. And then we go into participants. This would be the course offering participant. Okay, so now we're on Sophie Sanders' enrollment, her particular tracking through the course of interpersonal relationships. And then here we have something called the course offering participant results, which is where you can put in the letter grades. And so this, again, having this broken out like this allows you to do multiple times that you're collecting grades in this course. If you do midterm grades. So this is where a midterm grade would come in. Back up top, we can look at all of the academic records if you want to click into each individual one. So I kind of showed you the long way to get down into a course offering participant, but here would be the short way. So if you just want to see how Sophie is doing in interpersonal communication, you can click on it from right here and you go straight to where we were. So there's a lot of cool stuff that Education Cloud gives you right out of the box to get you started, to get you setting this stuff up. So if you are interested, please reach out, let us know. We would love to help you migrate from your EDA education data architecture into Agentforce Education Cloud. Thank you very much.